When she came into my life, my loneliness ended. And on that same day, without realizing it, I began to disappear from myself. It took me 3 years to understand which loss mattered more. I'm 82 years old, and I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me before I made the mistake I'm about to describe. When I was 67, I got a girlfriend. People around me acted like it was a blessing. My son told me I was doing the right thing. My neighbors said it was about time. My friends smiled at me like I had somehow won something back. And for a while, I believed them. I thought maybe they were right. I thought maybe I had repaired something inside me. I thought maybe the empty place I had lived with for years had finally been filled. But no one saw what was happening underneath that. No one asked what it was costing me. For 3 years, I woke up every morning at 5:30. That had been my habit for decades, and every morning, before I even opened my eyes, I felt something I had never felt before. It wasn't exactly sadness. It was quieter than sadness, heavier in a different way, something I couldn't name, but something strong enough to make getting out of bed feel harder than it should. At the time, I couldn't explain it. Even now, I can only explain it by telling you this. The morning she left, I walked into my kitchen, made my coffee, sat in my old chair, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt alive again. The relief came so quickly it startled me. Back then, I hated myself for feeling it. I thought maybe it made me cold, but now I know better. What I felt that morning was not cruelty, it was recognition. Something inside me had been waiting to come back.
I'm not telling you this because I hate relationships. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm not one of those old men trying to sound wise only after everything has already gone wrong. I'm just an 82-year-old man who learned something too late. And I would rather tell you now than have you spend your remaining years finding it out the way I did. Because I did lose something, and I'm still not sure I ever fully got it back. But before I tell you what that was, you need to understand the man I used to be before she ever came into my life. Because the man I was before all this happened is still the man I miss most. My wife, Carol, died in 2007. Blood poisoning. From the diagnosis to the funeral, it was 8 weeks. The doctors said it was quick. I suppose that was meant to comfort me. It didn't. There is nothing quick about watching the center of your life disappear. For the next 2 years, I wasn't truly living. I was moving, yes. Breathing, yes. Paying bills, washing dishes, answering the phone, but I was not fully there. I would walk into a room and forget why I had gone in. I would open the refrigerator and just stand there staring, unable to remember what I needed. There is a kind of grief that does not scream. It just hollows a man out quietly and leaves him walking through his own life like a shadow. That's what happened to me. But then, something changed. I'm a retired electrician. For 38 years, I ran wires through walls, fixed bad connections, and solved problems with my own hands. So when something breaks, my first instinct is to repair it. That's what I tried to do with myself. Behind my garage, I built a workshop, a real one. Workbench, pegboard, good lighting, tools where they belonged. At first, I made small things, because small things were all I could manage. A birdhouse, a step stool for my daughter, a shelf for the laundry room. Then bigger things, a bookshelf, a dining table for my son, a coffee table that took me weeks because I kept sanding it until it felt exactly right.
And somewhere in that quiet labor, without anyone noticing, I built myself a life again. By the time I was 65, I had a routine that belonged entirely to me. Up at 5:30, no alarm, coffee on the back porch for 20 minutes, no matter the weather. Workshop by 7, work until noon, a sandwich, a short rest, then back out again. It sounds simple. That was the beauty of it. Simple was exactly what I needed. I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't looking for excitement. I was content. And at that age, contentment is worth more than most people understand. I still missed Carol. I always would. But missing the dead is not the same thing as needing someone new to take their place.
Then my son started to worry. It began one Thanksgiving in 2012. Thomas looked at me across the table with that expression people get when they've quietly decided something is wrong with you. "Dad," he said, "you seem lonely." I told him I wasn't. I told him I enjoyed my own company. He said, "You spend all day alone in that garage. That's not good." 3 weeks later, he called and said there was someone he wanted me to meet, a woman from his work. Her name was Diane. She was 63, a retired nurse, widowed for 4 years. "Just have coffee with her, Dad," he said. "That's all, just coffee." I told him I'd think about it. The truth is, I wasn't miserable, I wasn't desperate, but there was still a quiet loneliness inside me, the kind you don't confess because once you say it out loud, people start trying to fix you. Then my neighbor Phil joined in. One morning at the mailbox, he told me life was too short to be alone. That's how people talk when they believe solitude is a sickness, as if peace and loneliness are the same thing, as if a quiet life must secretly be an empty one. This is the part I want you to pay attention to. This is where I made the mistake. I started listening. And once you hear the same thing from enough people, you begin to distrust your own happiness. You begin to wonder whether maybe they see something you don't. Maybe I am lonely. Maybe this life isn't enough. Maybe I've just gotten used to less. That is how it begins, not with love, not with passion, with doubt. In January, on a Tuesday afternoon, I met Diane for coffee. She was warm, easy to talk to. She asked about my woodworking. She laughed at my stories. She talked about her grandchildren in a way that was actually pleasant to listen to. When I drove home, I felt good. And I remember thinking maybe Thomas was right. Maybe this could be a good thing. The second coffee became dinner. Dinner became twice a week. By April, everyone around me seemed relieved. Thomas called more often. Phil looked pleased with himself. And I'll be honest, the first few months were nice. They really were. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't exactly love. It was simpler than that. It was the comfort of being noticed, the comfort of being expected, the comfort of having someone ask how your day went and wait for the answer. But what I didn't understand then was that she wasn't meeting the deepest part of me. She was meeting the version of me that knew how to be pleasant, the man who shaved every day, the man who made dinner plans, the man who asked about her sister's health. The real me was still in the workshop at 7 in the morning, standing in silence with a cup of coffee on the bench, thinking through the shape of a piece of wood before the tools even touched it. That man was the center of my life, and sooner or later, she was going to meet him.
The changes came quietly. That is how most losses happen. Diane liked to talk in the mornings, not just talk, think out loud. By 8 o'clock, she had already told me about a grandchild's school trouble, a neighbor's health issue,
something she'd heard on the radio and half a thought she was still trying to finish from the night before. I am not a man who speaks before 9 in the morning. That is not coldness, that is not a flaw, that is simply who I am. Carol understood that within 6 months of marriage. Diane never really did. For her, silence meant something was wrong. If I was quiet, she thought I was upset. If I went to the workshop, she assumed I was pulling away. She never said she disliked the workshop. She was too kind for that. Instead, around 10 o'clock, she would appear at the door and say she was just checking on me. Then she would stay. She asked gentle questions. "What's that for? Is it safe? How long will that take?" They weren't cruel questions. That almost made it worse, because I had no right to resent them. But they broke my concentration. They interrupted the rhythm I had built over years. So I started going into the shop earlier. Then she started getting up earlier too. Let me tell you something I never said out loud while it was happening. I wasn't angry at her. That's what made it all so confusing. She wasn't a bad woman. She wasn't selfish. She wasn't trying to ruin my life. She was simply there. And I had built a life that needed solitude the way lungs need air.
The breaking point came on a Wednesday morning in March, 3 years later. I woke up at 5:30. She was still asleep. I made my coffee and stood by the kitchen window looking out at the workshop. And for the first time since I had built that place, I realized I did not want to go inside. Not because I was tired, not because I was sick, not because I had run out of projects, but because I knew she would wake up in an hour, and whatever I started would be interrupted. So why begin at all? I stood there while the coffee went cold in my hand, and I asked myself a question that frightened me. When did I stop wanting to enter my own workshop? I searched my memory. It had been over a year, maybe longer. I had stopped starting big projects, stopped slipping into quiet peace without noticing, stopped feeling that deep morning stillness I once counted on. And I had not done it all at once. That was the terrible part. I had slowly reduced myself to fit around someone else's presence. That was the loss. It wasn't the mornings. It wasn't the workshop. It wasn't even the silence. It was my faith that my natural way of living was enough. For 3 years I had been told gently, kindly, persistently that I needed someone, that solitude was a problem, that contentment was only hidden loneliness, and little by little I believed them. 2 weeks later I ended the relationship. It hurt her, I know that. She asked what she had done wrong, and I told her the truth. Nothing. You did nothing wrong. The mistake was mine. Thomas was disappointed. Phil judged me.
People always judge what they do not understand. But the first morning after she was gone, I woke at 5:30. No footsteps in the hallway, no conversation waiting for me, no feeling that my time already belonged to someone else. I walked straight into the workshop. I put both hands on the workbench and stood there until noon. Not because I had something to build, because I needed to know I still could. And that morning, for the first time in years, I felt the old version of myself return. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to breathe again. So listen to me carefully. I'm 82, and this is what I know now.
Never get a girlfriend after 60 just because other people are uncomfortable with your solitude. Never do it because your children feel sorry for you. Never do it because your neighbors think companionship is always better than peace. And never do it because the world keeps whispering that being alone means something is broken in you. It doesn't. Love is not the enemy. Companionship is not the enemy, but fear is. The fear of being alone can push you into a life that no longer fits who you are. And at this age, that is a terrible bargain. Because dying alone is not the worst thing. Living your final years as someone you no longer recognize, that is worse. When your life fits you, your mornings belong to you. Your silence belongs to you. Your little habits, your chair, your porch, your workshop, even your coffee growing cold while you stand there thinking, it is enough. It was always enough. And I regret that it took me 3 years to remember it.